Hey, this is Dave DeCamp from antiwar.com. This is anti-war news for Thursday, March 6th, 2025. All right, the first story at the top of antiwar.com today. Trump threatens the people of Gaza with death. So this is some real sick stuff here from President Trump. On Wednesday, he issued a threat against the civilian population of Gaza, saying that the people of Gaza would be dead if the Israeli hostages were not released immediately. So, I figured I'll just read the whole statement so you get the context of it and everything. So he put this out on social media after meeting with a group of Israelis who were held captive in Gaza and were freed. So he says, quote, "Shalom, Hamas, means hello and goodbye. You can choose. Release all of the hostages now, not later, and immediately return all of the dead bodies of the people you murdered, or it is over for you. Only sick and twisted people keep bodies, and you are sick and twisted. I am sending Israel everything it needs to finish the job. Not a single Hamas member will be safe if you don't do as I say. I have just met with your former hostages whose lives you have destroyed. This is your last warning for the leadership. Now is the time to leave Gaza while you still have a chance. Also, to the people of Gaza, a beautiful future awaits, but not if you hold hostages. If you do, you are dead. Make a smart decision. Release the hostages now, or there will be hell to pay later," end quote. So he says, again, to the people of Gaza, a beautiful future awaits, but not if you hold hostages. If you do, you are dead. So he's conflating the people of Gaza with Hamas, threatening again that there will be hell to pay. Just a really horrific statement here from Trump. And again, this comes after he met with these Israeli hostages in the Oval Office. And I forgot that this meeting was going to happen. But I remember when I first heard about it, I thought we might see something like this from Trump afterwards. And, again, he's saying that he's sending Israel everything that they need to finish the job. And, he's meeting with these hostages. And how did they get out? Did they get out because Israel was bombing Gaza? No, they got out because of a deal, because of this deal that was reached that Israel is now in total violation of. And some Israeli hostages have been killed by Israeli bombing, but Trump's just threatening to do more of that if Hamas doesn't immediately release the rest of the hostages. And again, this is an explicit threat. I don't know any other way you're supposed to take that, saying to the people of Gaza, if the hostages aren't released, you will be dead. I mean, how else are we supposed to take that other than an explicit threat against a civilian population? Really despicable stuff. And you would think, the liberal media, the opposition would be upset about this, but I haven't really seen anything. It's just they don't care about dead Palestinians. All right, the next one here. Report says that the U.S. is holding direct talks with Hamas. So this came out the same day Trump made this threat. He made this threat after these reports came out, and I wonder if it's kind of a response to all this news about his administration holding direct talks with Hamas, which is a big deal because this is the first time this has ever happened between the U.S. and Hamas. So it was first reported by Axios that the Trump administration is holding direct talks with Hamas, marking the first time the U.S. has ever engaged directly with the Palestinian group. The report, which has been confirmed by the White House, so the White House confirmed that it's held these talks, said that the talks were focused on the release of the bodies of 4 Israeli hostages held in Gaza who have U.S. citizenship and a U.S. citizen who is believed to be alive, 21-year-old Edon Alexander, who grew up in New Jersey and moved to Israel after high school to join the Israeli military. So he's the only one out of the 5 that's believed to be alive. The report said that the U.S. and Hamas are also discussing the possibility of reaching a broader deal on a permanent truce, although Israel has severely violated the agreement reached in January and now has imposed a total siege on aid and all other goods entering Gaza with full U.S. backing. So these talks have been held in Doha, Qatar in recent weeks between Adam Boehler, who's President Trump's special envoy for hostages. I forgot about this position. So this guy, Adam Boehler, I don't know much about him. He was a businessman. He was involved in some stuff in the first Trump administration. But it's been between him and Hamas officials, and apparently they've been talking directly. One source told Axios that while the U.S. consulted Israel about the possible talks, Israel learned about them through other channels. And that essentially sounds like the U.S. did this on its own, and Israel found out about it by spying on the U.S. I mean, what other channels are there? And this was a report published in Axios by Barak Ravid, who's a former IDF soldier who was in an intelligence unit of the IDF. He always just gets great scoops on things that other people don't know about. So an Israeli source told the Times of Israel that the possibility of direct talks between the U.S. and Hamas came up during the Biden administration, but Israel expressed its opposition. The source said that Israel did not think that it was in the position to oppose the idea under the Trump administration, and said that Israeli officials were not fully briefed on these talks with Hamas ahead of time. So it looks like Israel leaked this to the press, and but again, now it's been confirmed by the U.S. and Hamas confirmed it as well. And they said, a Hamas official said that Steve Witkoff, who's Trump's Middle East envoy, has also been involved in the talks. And that was not reported by Axios initially. So, you see this. I mean, I think diplomacy is always good. So I saw this report and I said, hey, maybe this is a good sign, because, it says that they want to work on some kind of broader deal to end things. But at the same time, this could just be an effort to get the hostages with American citizenship out before Israel restarts, the bombing campaign and everything. So, we see this report, and then later in the day, Trump is threatening the people of Gaza. So, of course, that's not good. And just think about how much that emboldens Netanyahu and the people, to the right of him in the government, like Bezalel Smotrich, because, under Biden, at least you had a U.S. government that was pretending like they didn't like what Israel was doing in Gaza. Now you have a U.S. government that's saying, go ahead, blow it all up, kill them all, go for it. So then that puts the pressure on Netanyahu, again, from the people like Smotrich who want to restart and kill everybody and do the ethnic cleansing. And it's just really not good what's happening here. All right, so the next one here, Smotrich meets with U.S. Treasury Secretary in Washington. So speaking of Bezalel, Israeli Finance Minister Bezalel Smotrich, an outspoken proponent of the ethnic cleansing of Palestinians from Gaza and Israeli annexation of the West Bank, has arrived in the U.S., and he met with U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent in Washington on Wednesday. So he received a very warm welcome in Washington. The Biden administration reportedly had a tacit ban on Smotrich visiting Washington, although Biden provided Israel with plenty of weapons and backing to help carry out Smotrich's agenda, both in the destruction of Gaza and the advancement of settlements in the West Bank. So Smotrich said in a post on X, quote, "Good morning from Washington. After 4 years in which, under the Biden administration, no ministerial level meeting took place between the U.S. Treasury Department and the Israeli government, we are now entering the U.S. Treasury Department for a very important meeting," end quote. And you see this picture here of Smotrich and Bessent. And Smotrich, I think, is pretty short in general, and maybe Bessent is tall, but he just looks like tiny next to him. But Smotrich said that he would thank the Trump administration for its, quote, "unequivocal support of the state of Israel in the critical war of existence that we are waging," end quote. So after a meeting, they released a joint statement basically saying that they reaffirmed the economic ties between the U.S. and Israel and that they would work to advance them more. And Smotrich, I'm sure he's meeting with other U.S. officials. I'm sure he's meeting with members of Congress. Not exactly clear right now. But he's also expected to drum up support for Israeli annexation of the West Bank. Now, on February 5th, Trump was asked at the White House, will you support the Israeli annexation of the West Bank? And it was kind of strange. He said, I expect to announce something on that in 4 weeks. Well, Wednesday, the day Smotrich arrived, happened to be 4 weeks. So there's some anticipation that Trump might announce something when it comes to the annexation of the West Bank. And of course, Smotrich, besides being the finance minister, he also holds a position in the defense ministry that gives him the ability to advance Jewish settlements in the West Bank. And he's overseen massive land grabs in the Palestinian territory. All right, so the next one here, the World Food Program is running out of food supplies in Gaza. So the UN's World Food Program has warned that it only has enough food supplies in Gaza to keep public kitchens and bakeries open for less than 2 weeks after Israel blocked the entrance of all goods into Gaza. So Israel announced that it was cutting off the delivery of food, fuel, medicine, and other supplies in Gaza on Sunday. And of course, they have the full backing of the U.S. on this. And this is a violation of the ceasefire deal. And they're trying to pressure Hamas to agree to this new arrangement, basically extend the way things are and get Hamas to release more hostages without Israel having to withdraw from Gaza and agree to a permanent truce. So the World Food Program said that on top of its low food stocks, it only has enough fuel for a few more weeks. And Palestinians in Gaza said that they immediately felt the effects of Israel's siege on the entry of all goods as food prices jumped up. And before Sunday, Israel was still blocking the entry of mobile homes into Gaza, even though they agreed to let them in as part of the ceasefire deal. So we've seen, there's just they don't want the Palestinians to get any sort of comfort at all here. They want them to live in the rubble, in flimsy tents, and be miserable. And this is another thing, as I've talked a lot about this week, that there's a report from Israeli media saying that Israel has what they're calling a hell plan. And I bet that wording is based on Trump constantly saying that they're going to unleash hell on Gaza, and that would cut the electricity and the water to prepare for the bombing campaign. All right, so the next one here, Israeli killings in Gaza resume as ceasefire hangs by a thread. So this one's from Mondo Weiss. This is about 2 Palestinians who were killed in Gaza on Monday. I believe I mentioned briefly that 2 Palestinians were killed on Monday by Israeli fire. And this story gets into it. Basically, it was 2 friends, Khalid Al-Shar and Musa Kishta. They were, one was 60 years old and one was 59. So older men were walking toward their destroyed homes in the city of Rafah near the Egyptian border with Gaza. They had gone out for a stroll to pass the time until the day's Ramadan fast ended at sunset. When they arrived at the Rafah Municipality Stadium in the center of Rafah, they came into view of Israeli tanks stationed near the border. The tanks opened fire. And so the tanks opened fire, and then they tried to escape. They tried to run away. And then an Israeli quadcopter chased them and gunned them down and killed them. I mean, this sounds like things that were happening, multiple times per day back before the ceasefire. Obviously we've seen Israel violate the ceasefire the whole time, but just this, firing of the tank and then the quadcopters going in to finish the job. So this is, I didn't see any reports of Palestinians being killed on Wednesday. That doesn't mean that this stuff still isn't happening, though. All right, so the next one here, Trump suspends intelligence sharing with Ukraine. So the Trump administration has paused intelligence sharing with Ukraine on top of the suspension of military aid as part of an effort to get Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky to pursue peace talks with Russia. The intelligence pause has had an immediate effect on Ukraine's war effort since it has relied on U.S. intelligence for tracking Russian troops, and it's required for firing U.S.-provided HIMARS rocket systems. A U.S. official told Axios that the pause on intelligence sharing was focused on information that Ukraine could use to launch attacks inside Russian territory, and these operations have risked provoking a direct clash between the U.S. and Russia. This is some of the most provocative stuff that the U.S. has been doing, is supporting these attacks inside Russian territory. So the fact that those are paused is good. That can cool tensions. White House National Security Advisor Mike Waltz suggested that the pause on both intelligence sharing and military aid could be lifted once peace talks between Russia and Ukraine are set. He said, quote, "I think we can nail down these negotiations. I think if we can nail down these negotiations and move towards these negotiations and in fact put some confidence building measures on the table, then the president will take a hard look at lifting this pause. We have to know that both sides are sincerely negotiating towards a partial then permanent peace, end quote. So as I covered yesterday, Zelensky put out these statements saying the Oval Office meeting was regrettable, saying that he insisting that he wanted to work toward peace and all that. Apparently that hasn't been enough yet because the pause on military aid and intelligence sharing is still in effect. And John Ratcliffe, who's the director of the CIA, he suggested that the U.S. could soon resume supporting the war. He said that the pause, quote, will go away and we will work with Ukraine shoulder to shoulder as we have to push back on the aggression that is there, but to put the world at a better place for this peace negotiations to move forward, end quote. So Ratcliffe is sounding like real soon they're going to start supporting the war again. But for now, everything appears to be paused. The fighting's still happening. I saw Russian strikes in Ukraine and fighting across the front line still happening. All right, so the next one here, Israel advances deeper into southern Syria. This is one from Jason Ditz. So earlier this week, Israeli troops started their deepest invasion into Syrian territory yet, parachuting into the village of El Mal in the northern part of the Dara Governorate. El Mal is about 14 kilometers from the occupied Golan Heights. Is that exactly what they're doing there is unclear, but they destroyed some buildings, excavated some in the area, and then withdrew on Tuesday morning, according to locals, just part of the new normal in occupied southern Syria. Israeli forces also entered the town of al-Swissa in the Quneitra Governorate along with some nearby villages. They stayed for around 2 hours, according to reports from locals, and spent much of their time there interrogating residents. I mean, this is just the lack of attention that this Israeli invasion of southern Syria is getting is kind of unbelievable. I mean, it's not unbelievable, the way the media works, but you just think, there's just no other way to describe this other than an invasion of a neighboring country, and they just keep pushing further and further and rounding up civilians and interrogating them. You just think this stuff would be more newsworthy. So additional Israeli forces and their heavy machinery were seen advancing on the town of Al-Majdulia and its hospital, according to Al-Mayadeen. There has been no IDF comment on why that would be, nor really any comment on any of their operations inside Syria. And in recent days, we've also seen Israeli airstrikes in Syria. All right, so the next one here, Israeli drone strike wounds 2 civilians in southern Lebanon. Another one from Jason here. So civilians and vehicles in southern Lebanon are everywhere and always at risk from Israeli drones, and there have been an increasing number of such drones flying overhead in a lot of southern villages. And on Wednesday, multiple Israeli drone strikes targeted a car in the waste dump on the outskirts of Ras Nakora. 2 civilians who were there collecting scrap metal were wounded in the strikes and have been taken to a hospital. And then the IDF is claiming that what happened was starkly different, saying that the car was a Hezbollah arms transport car. So that's the Israeli story. But the reports on the ground in Lebanon from the hospital is that these guys were there collecting scrap metal and were civilians. All right, so the next one here, Israeli forces detain a 14-year-old Palestinian without charge or trial. So this one's from Middle East Eye. Israel has issued an administrative detention order against a 14-year-old Palestinian, making him the youngest child administrative detainee on record, according to the watchdog Defense for Children International Palestine. So Muin Ghassan Fahed Salahat was arrested by Israeli forces during a pre-dawn raid on his home in Beit Fajar, south of Bethlehem in the occupied West Bank on February 19th. DCIP reported that Israeli soldiers stormed his home at 3:40 a.m., detaining, blindfolding, and cuffing his father. When Muin awoke, he was also seized, and soldiers attempted to blindfold him and tie his hands behind his back as they took him away. Muin's father was warned not to move for at least 10 minutes. So Salahat was then issued a 4-month administrative detention order on March 2nd and is now being held without trial or charge. And so a 14-year-old kid thrown in jail for at least 4 months, no charges, no trial, no explanation for the father. And as with other administrative detainees, Salahat is now being held without charge on trial on secret evidence not disclosed to him or his lawyer. His detention is set from March 2nd to June 18th, with a review by an Israeli military court scheduled within 12 days. So again, they're saying he's being held, no charge, no trial. They're saying they have secret evidence that they're not sharing with him or his lawyer. This is life under the Israeli military occupation. Palestinians have no rights, and they can just be thrown into a cage, thrown into a dungeon at the whim of the Israeli military and not even be told what it's about. All right, so the next one here, Supreme Court orders distribution of foreign aid. So this one's from Kyle Anzalone at the Libertarian Institute. So in a narrow 5-4 ruling, the Supreme Court ordered that President Donald Trump must allow U.S. aid to distribute $2 billion in foreign aid that is currently frozen. In the opening weeks of the Trump administration, the White House has worked to cut down on foreign aid projects and defund the vast network of NGOs operating with American financial support around the globe. Chief Justice John Roberts and Trump appointee Amy Coney Barrett joined the 3 liberal justices in their ruling against the White House. The 5 justices upheld a decision by a district court judge that required the Trump administration to release $2 billion in foreign aid that the president ordered frozen. In one of Trump's first acts after returning to the Oval Office, he ordered a freeze on all foreign aid. And last month, so you had the district court judge say that they should disperse the aid, and the Supreme Court has backed that up. So the next one here, Trump administration moves to abolish another international aid agency. So this is another one from Kyle. So this is the Inter-American Foundation, a very small U.S. agency that I wasn't even aware of until these reports. So during the opening days of the second Donald Trump administration, the White House has worked to rein in and scale down government agencies that distribute foreign aid. And the Inter-American Foundation, or the IAF, is next on the chopping block. A Trump appointee fired the agency's president and CEO and removed its board of directors. So this is a small agency. It has 37 employees. I mean, you compare that to other U.S. government agencies, it sounds small. And they had a $60 million budget, and that's getting cut. And I am not familiar too much with this agency, but this is DOGE, Elon Musk's DOGE, the Department of Government Efficiency. They identified several of IAF's programs, including $903,000 for alpaca farming in Peru, $364,000 to reduce social discrimination of recyclers in Bolivia, $813,000 for vegetable gardens in El Salvador, $323,000 to promote cultural understanding of Venezuelan migrants in Brazil. Other things here, improving the marketability of mushrooms in Guatemala. So, the list goes on here. This is the type of things that this organization has funded, and now they're getting the axe. We'll see. This might be another thing that the Supreme Court tries to stop. All right, so the next one here, Houthis shoot down another U.S. MQ-9 Reaper drone. So the Houthis said on Tuesday that Yemeni forces have downed another U.S. MQ-9 Reaper drone that was operating over Yemen's Hodeidah province. A U.S. military official acknowledged to Al Arabiya that the U.S. Air Force had lost contact with one of its MQ-9 drones that was operating over the Red Sea as part of Operation Poseidon Archer, the U.S. military operation targeting the Houthis. So it was operating right on the coast of Yemen. And the incident marks the 15th time since 2023 that the Houthis have claimed they shot down a U.S. MQ-9. And each of these drones cost $30 million. So they said that they've downed 15 MQ-9s. I mean, that's a lot. These are big drones. These are not small drones. These are drones that can carry, Hellfire missiles and are very advanced surveillance drones. So we don't, the Pentagon hasn't confirmed every single time the Houthis said that they downed a drone, but they also haven't, they've also acknowledged many of them, and usually they don't admit it, say, oh, the Houthis shot it down. They say, oh, we lost contact with it. And then you'll see pictures from Yemen of a MQ-9 drone, downed. But, whether or not the 15 number is exactly accurate, they have taken out a lot of these drones. And, where things stand right now, So far, under the new Trump administration, we have not seen airstrikes against the Houthis. Biden bombed them for a whole year, and it only escalated the situation in the Red Sea. The reason why we haven't seen any more airstrikes is because the Houthis stopped their attacks on Israel and Israeli shipping in response to the Gaza ceasefire deal. But of course, that's all so shaky right now, and they're saying they'll intervene again if the deal blows up. So then, there is a chance, I think, that it looks like the Trump administration is getting ready to bomb the Houthis with the FTO designation, and they're loosening restrictions on the drone strikes and special ops raids, and officials said that they have the Houthis in mind as a target for that. All right, so the next one here, Defend the Guard Act passes Arizona Senate. So this article is from the 10th Amendment Center. I've been meaning the Defend the Guard has been really busy. It's introduced in all different states. And I want to cover some of it, but the 10th Amendment Center, they always have stories on their blog about it, so I figure I'll start running some of their stuff. So the Arizona Defend the Guard Act took a major step forward on Wednesday, passing the state Senate in a vote of 16-13. The legislation would prohibit the governor from releasing any unit or member of the Arizona National Guard into active duty combat unless Congress passed an official declaration of war, as required by Article 1, Section 8, Clause 11 of the Constitution. So this is, it's passed, I believe, the Arizona State Senate in previous years and failed in the House. They have a real champion of the bill in the Arizona State Senate, State Senator Wendy Rogers, she's a veteran herself, and she really is a real proponent of this bill. So now it goes to the House for further consideration. And the 10th Amendment Center, if you live in Arizona, they have this helpful page here for some of the ways that you can help. Contact the Speaker of the House, contact your own state senator and representative, contact committee members, and people out of state could do this as well. And spread the word about Defend the Guard. Again, I've just been meaning to cover it more often. And another thing that happened, I had this story recently about the Montana vote. They needed people to get on the phone to the Democrats, who were the adjunct general, the 2-star general in charge of the Montana's National Guard, was basically threatening the state representatives with that they would lose federal funding, if they passed this. So what happened in Montana is that it failed. The pressure worked. It failed a vote through that committee, but then just a few days later, they voted again, and some Democrats flipped back. So it passed the committee, and I believe now potentially the next step is a full House vote, though it seems like there's some more shenanigans going on. They're trying to put it through another committee to kill it. So if you're in Montana, keep up the pressure on your representatives. And, I always put the link to phone banking for Defend the Guard in the description of the show. If you want to get involved in anti-war activism, I think it's the most effective thing right now, because this legislation would really take away some war-making abilities of the federal government. They always send the National Guard to Syria, Iraq, Somalia. And you could also go to defendtheguard.us to check out your state to see what the status is of it there. All right, so the last story here, South Korea says that nuclear weapons are not off the table. So this one's from Kyle again at the Libertarian Institute. So a high-level South Korean official said that Seoul could seek nuclear weapons. Foreign Minister Cho Tae-yul said a strategic arsenal may be because President Trump is unpredictable, basically saying who knows what Trump could do. He could end up supporting us getting our own nuclear weapons. I think that's pretty unlikely, but this goes to show kind of the state of things on the Korean Peninsula. This is something Yoon, who of course is facing impeachment after his little attempt at a military takeover. I don't know exactly what he was trying to do when he declared martial law. But this is something he's talked about a lot. He wants nuclear weapons. He's on his way out, or he's done. But we still have other officials talking about getting nuclear weapons, which just doesn't bode well for the situation, the tensions between North and South Korea. We haven't seen any work toward kind of diffusing that, at least as far as we're aware of publicly by the Trump administration, to ease tensions on the Korean Peninsula. All right, so that is it for the news for today. Please go check out our Viewpoints, one from Ted Snyder. Zelensky told Trump that Putin cannot be trusted, but who killed Minsk II? One from Ted Galen Carpenter, Canary in the Coal Mine, Romania's Dying Democracy. One from Caitlin Johnstone, the West's support for Israel is the number one threat to free speech. And one from Roger D. Harris, Trump's détente with Venezuela. And one from Ali Bakir, why Israel wants Syria to become a failed state. So please go check all of that out. So much stuff going on every day. It just feels like we're swamped. But you can support this show by liking, subscribing, following us on social media, sharing the show, telling your friends about antiwar.com. Happy Lent to my fellow Catholics out there. It started with Ash Wednesday. I will be back tomorrow with some more news. One more show this week. Thanks for listening.